Have you ever heard a story so disturbing that it made your skin crawl? Something that not only piqued your curiosity, but left you with a strange sense of unease? That's exactly what we're going to explore today.
This video is an invitation to delve into two true stories that defy logic and touch on the deepest part of our fears: the unknown.
Some horror stories are just fiction, created to scare and entertain. But what happens when the events are real? When the people who lived through these experiences swear that every detail happened? These stories are not only scary because of their nature, but because they make us question our understanding of the world. After all, how can we explain the unexplainable? In the first story, we'll travel to a small town surrounded by a mysterious forest, where a disappearance revealed secrets that perhaps should never have been unearthed. In the second, you'll be taken to an isolated house where darkness seemed to have a life of its own, tormenting a family that only wanted peace. These stories will shake your perception of reality. Every detail, every twist and turn, was experienced by real people, just like you and me. As we dive into these stories, I ask you to ask yourself, what if this were me? What if the unexplainable came knocking at your door? So, prepare yourself for what's to come. Turn up the volume, turn down the lights, but be careful. What you hear here may stay with you for much longer than you think. On the outskirts of a small town in the countryside, surrounded by a dense and ancient forest, a mystery began to unfold. This forest, known to the locals as the Black Veil, has always had a peculiar aura. Many avoided entering it, especially at dusk, due to the legends that circulated in the region. It was said that those who dared to venture too far into the shadows of the forest might not return. The story begins with a young man named Lucas, 17 years old, who was known for his tireless curiosity and his adventurous spirit. To him, the stories about the Black Veil were just superstition. He used to explore the forest's edges with his friends, but always careful not to stray too far. Until, one ordinary afternoon, Lucas decided to go deeper than ever. That night, he didn't return home. His mother, Maria, realized something was wrong when dinner got cold and Lucas didn't answer her calls. Worried, she started asking her son's friends, but no one knew where he was. At first, they thought he might have lost track of time, but when the sun rose and Lucas still hadn't appeared, panic began to set in. The authorities were called, and an organized search quickly began. Volunteers from the town, family, friends, and even people who barely knew Lucas joined the effort. But as the days passed without a sign of him, the forest seemed to grow even darker. Many began to remember the old legends, whispering about curses and hidden presences. What no one knew was that Lucas's disappearance would only be the beginning of a chain of events that would shake the entire community. The search for Lucas continued relentlessly. For the first few days, the volunteers organized themselves into groups to explore the forest. Equipped with flashlights, maps, and radios, they followed familiar trails and delved deeper and deeper into the dense vegetation. But the forest seemed to resist their presence. Stories began to emerge, footsteps following the groups, muffled laughter coming from far away, and a general sense that something or someone was watching them. One of the volunteers, Carlos, a practical man who did not believe in superstition, reported seeing bright lights in the trees on the second night of the search. He described the lights as small and floating, as if they were guiding him somewhere. As he tried to follow them, Carlos got lost for almost 3 hours, and when he was found, he was disoriented. All he could manage to say was, "Don't follow the lights. They don't lead to anything good." This story was dismissed by many as exhaustion or stress, but the elders of the town began to tell stories that went back centuries. They said that the forest was inhabited by something beyond our understanding, something that protected its secrets at all costs. On the fourth night, something even stranger happened. One of the sniffer dogs began barking frantically and ran into the forest, dragging its handler with it. The group followed it, believing that they had finally found a solid lead. The dog stopped in a clearing that no one knew about, deep in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a pile of personal belongings: a backpack, a pair of shoes, and Lucas's phone. Everything was perfectly clean, with no signs of dirt or wear, as if it had been placed there recently. But what really astonished everyone was what was inside the backpack. A small notebook, with partially burned pages, contained notes made by Lucas in the days before his disappearance. Some of the pages were confusing, with drawings of eyes and abstract shapes. Others, however, contained clear messages. "Something is watching me. The forest breathes. The lights. They want to take me." These notes were the turning point. Many volunteers decided to abandon the search, terrified by what they believed to be a supernatural phenomenon. The few who remained, including Lucas's parents, continued to insist. On the sixth night, the search reached its most disturbing moment. A group of 4 volunteers were following a small stream when they heard a voice. It was low and broken, but unmistakable. It was Lucas's voice. They ran toward the sound, shouting his name, but the voice seemed to move, guiding them deeper and deeper into the forest. When they finally reached a spot they believed they were close to, they found only silence. One of the volunteers shone his flashlight on a nearby tree and saw something he would never forget: a face. It was not a real human face, but a figure carved into the bark of the tree. It was Lucas's face, with the eyes carved in disturbing detail. The expression seemed to be one of pain, and the image was so realistic that many believed it was not just a sculpture. At dawn, the group returned to town, shaken and unable to explain what they had seen. Authorities officially called off the search after that day, declaring that Lucas had probably been lost and there was no longer any hope of finding him alive. Lucas's parents, however, never gave up. They continued to visit the forest for months, hoping to find a clue that would solve the mystery. Lucas's journal remained with them, a reminder of their son and his curious spirit. To them, it was proof that he had discovered something in the forest that was not meant to be found. To this day, the clearing where the objects were found does not appear on any official map. Many locals believe that the forest somehow protects its secrets, keeping intruders away and silencing those who get too close. And what about Lucas? His disappearance remains unexplained. Some believe he succumbed to the natural dangers of the forest, while others are convinced he was the victim of something much darker. The forest stands there, imposing and silent, as a reminder that some questions should never be asked. After all, some answers are more frightening than the unknown. When the Martins family moved into their country house, everything seemed perfect. After years of living in the city, they finally realized their dream of living in a peaceful place, far from the chaos of the city. The house was spacious, surrounded by a large plot of land with fruit trees and a stunning view of the valley. But soon, the tranquility would turn into uneasiness. It all started with small incidents. Doors that closed by themselves, lights that flickered, and the feeling that someone was passing behind them when they were alone. Laura, their 9-year-old daughter, was the first to notice something strange. One night, while drawing in her room, she told her parents that a lady in a black dress had passed by in the hallway. At first, the Martins thought it was just their child's imagination, but the events soon intensified. The nights began to be marked by unexplained noises, heavy footsteps upstairs, even when everyone was downstairs, and whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls. The family tried to find rational explanations, attributing the noises to the old structure of the house, but explanations began to run out when the events became more physical. One morning, Pedro, the father, woke up with a suffocating sensation. He described it as if something was pressing on his chest, preventing him from breathing. When he finally managed to move, He saw a dense shadow in the corner of the room, still and motionless. He tried to turn on the light, but the switch did not work. It was only when he screamed that the shadow seemed to dissipate, and the light returned to normal. After that, Pedro began to investigate the history of the house. He discovered that the property had been vacant for years before being put up for sale. The previous owners had moved out abruptly, but did not leave much information. Intrigued, Pedro consulted local residents and heard rumors that the house already had a reputation for being strange. Meanwhile, Laura continued to report the presence of the lady in black. She said that the woman would stand at the foot of her bed at night, watching her sleep. Despite their growing fear, the family was hesitant to leave the house, partly because they had invested all their savings in the purchase. The phenomena reached a peak when Laura began speaking in disjointed sentences in her sleep. One night, Anna, the mother, heard her daughter mumbling, "They're here. They don't want us to stay." Frightened, Anna shook her daughter to wake her, but Laura did not respond. When she finally opened her eyes, she looked directly at her mother and said, in a voice that was not her own, "You need to leave before it's too late." Anna panicked and decided it was time to seek help. The family contacted a priest from the neighboring town, who agreed to visit the house and perform a blessing. The priest arrived on a Saturday morning. He was a calm man, but as he walked through the door, his expression changed. He said the atmosphere was heavy and asked that the ritual begin immediately. As he prayed, the supernatural events seemed to intensify. Doors slammed shut on their own, objects fell off shelves, and lights flickered uncontrollably. In the middle of the ritual, Laura screamed and fainted on the floor. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything, but she said she had dreamed of the lady in black, who was holding her and telling her that the house belonged to her. The priest managed to complete the ritual, but warned her that the presence in the house was not something he could eliminate completely. He suggested that the family consider moving, but Pedro and Anna were still reluctant to make that decision. A few days after the ritual, things seemed to have calmed down, but it was just an illusion. One night, while Laura was sleeping, Anna realized that something was wrong. When she entered her daughter's room, she found all the windows open, even though they had been locked before. Sleeping, Laura was sitting on the bed, her eyes fixed on the bedroom door. When Anna asked what was happening, Laura replied, "She's here. She's in the living room." Anna called Pedro, and together they went down to the living room. What they found terrified them. All the furniture had been moved, forming a circle in the center of the room. There were black handprints on the floor, as if someone had pressed their hands hard against the floor. That was the breaking point. The next morning, the family decided to leave the house and never return. They sold the property for a price well below market value and moved to the city, where they tried to rebuild their lives. Despite the distance, Laura still has recurring nightmares about the lady in black. Pedro and Anna avoid talking about the house, but when asked, they admit that something inexplicable happened there. What happened in that house remains a mystery. Was it a case of supernatural activity or just a series of frightening coincidences? Regardless of the answer, the Martins family has never been able to completely erase the memories of what they experienced there. What about you? How far would you go to protect your family from something you can't explain? The stories we explore today, Luca's disappearance in the forest and the disturbing events at the Martins family home, have something in common. They both confront us with the unknown. They are stories that defy our logic and awaken a primal fear. The fear of what we cannot see, understand, or control. In Luca's case, the forest was the scene of a disappearance shrouded in mystery, full of signs that pointed to something beyond the natural world. An inexplicable, perhaps even evil, presence seemed to swallow the young man without a trace, while witnesses reported events that defied human comprehension. The story of the Martins family, on the other hand, confronts us with the possibility that places can carry marks of the past, energies, or presences that we cannot explain. The figure of the Lady in Black and the supernatural events inside the house question our perception of safety in spaces that we consider ours. These stories are a reminder that, even in a world full of science and technology, there are still phenomena that remain shrouded in mystery. The fascination with scary true stories is ingrained in our psyche. They remind us that reality can be just as terrifying as fiction. When we hear these stories, we are forced to question our beliefs and reflect on what we know, or think we know, about the world. In addition, these stories serve as an escape valve. They allow us to explore fear in a controlled way, in the comfort of our own homes, but they leave us with uncomfortable questions. What if they were real? What if something similar could happen to us? While it is easy to dismiss these stories as coincidences or figments of imagination, the protagonists believe deeply in what they experienced. For them, these experiences were transformative, leaving an irrevocable mark on their lives. So here is a warning. Sometimes, the unknown should remain exactly that, unknown. Curiosity may be a natural impulse, but there are times when asking too many questions or exploring the wrong places can have unpredictable consequences. And with that, we end our dive into two of the scariest stories we have come across. If these stories have touched you, don't worry, you're not alone. What we've learned today is that the unknown can be scary, but it's that very uncertainty that makes the world so fascinating. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these stories has left you most uneasy? And have you ever experienced something unexplainable that you'd like to share? Let us know in the comments. After all, the world is full of stories waiting to be told. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We have many more dark and true stories that you won't want to miss. Until next time, if you have the courage to come back,